So if I know the future and I have to participate in the future, but I don't want the future to be the way it is, but I can't change the future, but I know it, so I have to make the decision to do the future. I don't know. Hello everyone and welcome to another video by Liminal Spaces. Today we're going to be discussing Ted Chiang's novella, The Story of Your Life, which is what the movie Arrival was based on. The reason that I chose to do this story is I've recently read Frank Herbert's The Whipping Star, and it's about language and trying to communicate with aliens that see the world in a different, or the universe in a different perspective than we do, and that instantly made me think of the movie Arrival, so I decided to read the story that is based on. Before I get too much into the plot, I wanted to just give you a quick publication history for this novella. Again, it was written by Ted Chiang. The first publication of this novel was in an anthology called Starlight 2 in 1998. And right after its publication, the year after, it was nominated for a Hugo Award for Best Novella. It did not win that, but in 2000, the year after, it won the Nebula for Best Novella. So it did make some waves when it first came out. It was published again in 2002 in Ted Chiang's short story collection called Story of Your Life and Others, which was, once the movie came out, renamed Arrival after the movie for the movie tie-in, which is the version I read. Not the best version, but it's the one that I had, so that is the one that I read. Okay, let's look a little bit at the plot of this story, and just so everybody knows, this is a deep reading and a review, so I'm going to spoil the entire plot. Most of you, I assume, have either read it or seen the movie, so you basically know the plot already. But there is a twist in this, and if you haven't seen the movie or read this, I would suggest you stop this video now, go read it, and or watch the movie and come back and watch the rest of this. The story is narrated by linguist Dr. Louise Banks, and she is narrating this story on the day of the birth of her daughter. And the story is interesting because it jumps back and forth to her looking back into the past at the story of aliens coming to the world and how she was chosen to interact with a few of the aliens to learn their language. And simultaneously, it tells the story of the child's life that has just been born. So she's looking into the past and into the future simultaneously throughout this story. It's a very strange narrative structure, and we'll go more into the future part a little later. But for now, I want to focus on the part of the story that is in the past, and that is the aliens coming to our planet for the first time, the first contact story. So aliens arrive in Earth's orbit, and a bunch of what can only be described as kind of mirror-like objects suddenly appear, over a little over 100 of them, all over the globe in all these different countries. And the people of Earth soon realize that these are ways to communicate with the aliens that are in orbit. The Americans decide to call them looking glasses. So Dr. Louise Banks, who is a linguist, and Dr. Gary Donnelly, who is a physicist, are both hired to look into and try to communicate with aliens through one of these looking glasses. So right away, Louise starts to learn their language and tries to help them a little bit understand ours, although the military powers that be don't really want to give the aliens anything. They want Dr. Louise Banks to try and hide as much of our language and our technology from them because they don't really know why they're here. So she starts trying to learn as much of the alien language as she can without revealing too much of the human language. And the aliens don't seem bothered by this. They don't ask any questions. They just let Louise kind of take control and start learning their language. The aliens are called heptapods because they have 7 limbs and kind of a radially symmetrical torso or trunk. So really they can see all around them in 360 degrees. Nothing is surprising because of the way that they're made. So right away, Dr. Louise Banks starts to realize that the spoken language of the heptapods is different than the written language. And she's having a really hard time putting her finger on why there's a difference. The spoken language has to follow, the words have to follow an order. So, yeah, almost a causation chain. The words have to follow this very specific order. Whereas in the written language, the way that their language works, and this takes her a bit to realize, is there's symbols that are just laid one over the other, and the symbols can rotate and change their meanings. So there is no first word or last word in a written sentence by the heptapods. And she's having a hard time figuring out what this means and what to call this. And Gary, the physicist that's working with her, hasn't really made any headway with discussions of physics with the heptapods. But eventually there's a breakthrough at another looking glass in the United States with another physicist, and that is the concept of Fermat's Principle. They present the aliens Fermat's Principle, and the aliens really understand the principle and are able to give back in that conversation in a way that they haven't been able to with Dr. Gary Donnelly at the looking glass that we're following. Now, Fermat's Principle. I am not a physicist or a scientist by any means. I have a healthy love of the sciences, but I'm not well trained in those fields. So this is going to be my very simple layman breakdown of what I understand as the Fermat's Principle. So basically, what Gary shows Louise is there's this light ray / particle and a puddle of water, and the light hits the water and of course changes its trajectory slightly through the water. We see that bend with the light in the water, which we know happens. But what he explains to Louise and to us, Fermat's Principle, is that the light will always travel the path of least time. So he shows that the light could come down at a stronger angle and bend less, or the light could come down at a broader angle, I don't know if that's the right word, and bend less this way. And he says if it went this way, it would be a shorter distance, but it would take longer. And if it went this way, it'd be a shorter distance and take longer. If it went this way, it'd be a longer distance, but could take shorter. But there's only one path that is I think in the end it turns out to be a longer distance, but it takes less time. I'm sorry, it's getting all confusing. Anyway, what he says is the light will always choose, or will always go. Choose is a weird word. The light will always go in the direction that takes it the least time, or it will always follow the path that takes it the least time. And Louise takes this idea and comes up with the concept that in that case, light must know its destination before it starts moving, because it has to always know the path of least time, right? And how can it know the path of least time without knowing where that path is going to end up? And this gives her a breakthrough in the heptapod language. in that when the heptapods write a sentence, there is no first word and last word. They write the sentence is a stack of concepts in a symbol that are all put together in one symbol, and they write it all at one time, which means they have to know what the whole sentence is going to be before they start writing the sentence. And this allows her to really dig in and start learning the heptapod language. And as she learns, she begins to realize that, and because she starts kind of thinking in heptapod language, and the more she does this, the more that she begins to realize that she is seeing time not only presently and from the past, but also from the future, which is how she's able to narrate this story on the day that her daughter's born, where on one hand she tells the story of learning the heptapod language, and on the other hand she outlines the entire future of the child she's just giving birth to, all the way to the fact that the kid will die in a climbing accident when she is 25. So she has given birth to this child knowing this child's entire history, which we'll get to in just a second. The last plot point of this book is that the heptapods, after talking for a while, one day they're exchanging some information, and the heptapods just are like, okay, bye. We'll see you later. And they just leave. They never said why they came. They never explained anything. They just showed up, let these people learn their language, and then take off. And in the novella, she says that's the last we ever saw of them. And she knows the future up to her death, which she says is 50 years hence. So they don't come back in that 50 years at all. So that's the basic plot. I have some convoluted feelings about this. I really enjoyed the ideas that this story made me think of, but I also had some qualms with how it was written. It's an easy read. It's very simple. You can shoot through it. It took me probably maybe an hour and a half to get through this entire thing. So it's not a hard read. What I instantly noticed is that this was mimicking so much an academic essay that for me, all of the awe and wonder of science were kind of sucked out. Like when she first meet these aliens, there is no moment of awe that the character experiences. All she does is outline very academically what they look like. And this had a tendency for me to just really make the writing not very interesting. Now, my brother is going to be doing a deep dive into this movie. It'll probably be out tomorrow, so be ready for that. And he was watching the special features on his disc, so he told me about a little clip where it has an interview with the writer of the story, Ted Chiang. And in that clip, Ted Chiang says that he wanted to write about the parts of science fiction stories that are always ignored. The parts after the discovery, after the initial awe has blown over and they send in scientists to study. So this was a conscious choice on his part to write the story like this. It was an idea that he had, and there's nothing wrong with great ideas and trying ideas from different angles. It didn't work specifically for me because I like the awe, and I still think that even though this is just an academic going to meet aliens that have already surprised and awed the world, I still think there would be some awe on her part in discovering them. And I just didn't sense from her character that she was ever really excited. It was very strange. So he made a choice, and in my opinion, wasn't the best choice. The second concept that this novella really wanted to take on, and he talks about this in interviews as well, is he wanted to talk about the concept of if we knew the future but couldn't change it, what would that look like? Right? And this is a really strange kind of mind-bending concept. What would it be like? What would it mean to determinism and fate versus free will if we could see the future but could never change it? Right? And that's the really philosophical concept this book brings up. She can see the future, but can she change it? When we just talk about paradox and seeing the future and changing the future, it's all very philosophical and theoretical. But when we consider it from the perspective of somebody is seeing the future and they can't change it, that allows us to really delve into the problem, right? So if you could see the future and you knew you were going to have a kid and that kid was going to die young, would you choose to still have that child? And the question goes even deeper than that. In this case, in the book, is could you even choose not to? So I love this idea, and I love thinking about this. This is complex and very, very hard to answer, right? Would our brains force us to make the same decisions, but come up with reasons why we're making those decisions to destroy the cognitive dissonance of whether or not we have free will? Right? If we could see the future but couldn't change it, we would have to deal with moving forward and making the same decisions, but still feel like we are free to make our own decisions. It's wild. And I love that this is the idea that he wants to talk about throughout this story. My problem is, I feel like he doesn't talk about it at all, right? She never explains why she's chosen to have this child. She never goes through the logic in her brain that says, I'm going to have this child anyway, even though I know there will be pain. It's still worth the pain. Like, none of that is discussed. We just know that she is still going forward with it, even though she can see the future. And maybe that's what he's saying. Maybe he's saying she is in a weird position because she knows the whole future and can't do anything about it. So she's just dashing forward. But I would like to have seen a little bit more of him delving into the concept that in interviews he said he wanted to talk about in this novella, and that is, does that mean there's no free will if you can see the future and can't change it? Or does our brain make us feel like we still have free will, but we still make the same decisions? Wild question that I wish you would have delved into a little bit more. If I have to rate this book, for me, this is a 7 out of 10. I didn't like the choice to make it very dry and academic. It took away a lot of the fun and a lot of the awe for me. I absolutely love the twist of learning the language allows her to see into the future. That is stunning. That's what gives it all its points. It's absolutely incredible. I also feel that we didn't see a lot of character development. We see all these things happen, but we don't really get any of the drive of why anybody's doing anything, so that made it kind of hard. However, I do recommend, if you like science and philosophy and the concept of time travel, that you give this one a read. It was fun. I just had some issues with it. Again, and I think by tomorrow, my brother will have the second part of us talking about this piece of art and how it's changed throughout mediums. My brother's going to be taking on the second part. He'll be talking about the movie Arrival and deep diving into that. So look forward to that. If you liked this, please click like. And if you like this kind of content, please click subscribe. We'll be making a lot more of it in the future. And thank you very much for watching this video to the end.